top 100 of your juniors in college and the top 100 of your sophomores list, LSU lands 5 on the top 100 juniors list, not including
big omission.
Big omission. Literally and figuratively.
A bear of an omission.
A bear of an omission. Bear Jones not in the top 100 of juniors returning are currently in college. Very head-scratching decision. Hopefully more motivation to him for him to hit a 30-burger this year and do the same things he was doing last year. But LSU lands 5 on that list, 5 in the top 100 sophomores list, which is 10 total guys on the team right now in 2 classes. Plus they have the number 1 freshman class in the country. Or I guess D1 Baseball describes it as number 1 impact freshman class in the country, which in my mind is the number 1 recruiting class in the country, because if you have the number 1 impact class in the country, that means you recruited really good. And so that, to me, goes hand in hand. It feels like it's an odd way to title those types of rankings. But LSU, you got 3 of those that have landed as big impact freshmen. It's the 3 freshmen that we've talked about. William Schmidt, obviously pitcher from Catholic High. Fastball's up to 98, has a banger of a breaking ball. Good size. Wants to be here, which I think is one of those intangible characteristics that you can't really measure. Someone who really wants to play for LSU and has dreamed about playing for LSU and has the talent. I think that's a good mix. You have Derek Curiel, outfielder, who we've heard a ton about, doesn't strike out, ton of contact, plays really good defense. Feels like he's going to kind of force his way into the starting rotation or starting lineup, specifically in center field. Where does that put Jake Brown? Where does that put Ashton Larson? Where does that put Pearson? Where does that put Fry? You know, we got a lot of talented guys. Sandfield. We got a lot of guys out there that had the opportunity to play. This freshman seems like he's impressing. He's going to get some at-bats. See what happens when he does that. And then Aaron Beatty is the 3rd freshman that they have talked about, who obviously is behind the plate and in a position of need for LSU. So those guys we've talked about a lot, but LSU's got a lot of hype. How are y'all feeling about it? What do y'all think about LSU?
Dude, I look at this roster and there's a ton of depth. I think if nothing else, the last 2 years, Jay has kind of been able to almost teach himself by fire. I'm not going to sit here and say he's never had depth. He's never had good players. He's never had good rosters before. But being able to put these kind of rosters together at a school, in a conference like this, what he's done in the past couple of years, he's got experience in terms of, hey, I got all of these pieces, but I need to figure out how to make these pieces work. And I think by putting these pieces together and what he's going through in the past, it'll give him the chance to kind of put this stuff together a little bit quicker and let this thing gel a little bit quicker. And you're going to need it, because we talked about the back end of the schedule off air before we even started this thing, and it's brutal. So they're going to need to be able to find that rhythm a little bit earlier to get themselves into the back end of the season, where those guys are kind of clicking. They know their roles, they know what they're expected to do, and they're going through pretty much the gauntlet of that schedule getting into the postseason. Well, I'm expecting a big year from them, honestly, because when you have that kind of depth and that kind of talent, if you're able to coach it right, which we know Jay can, if you're able to create a culture, which we know Jay can, the only thing that you should be able to do is find success some kind of way. So I'm expecting a big year out of it.
Yeah, and I think that, we talked about, because the schedule was so brutal in the back end, which we're going to get into, LSU can't afford to do what they did last year and start off slow and be able to have to pick it up in the back half. Now, last year the schedule was kind of flipped. It was very hard beginning of the season, and it lightened up in the back end. That's whenever they were kind of getting their run and they started playing good baseball. Maybe it's going to be better this year. You're going to have some time to be able to get that experience. Obviously, it's the SEC, so these guys are good. These teams are good, all of them. But it's going to give you some opportunity to go out there and maybe not have to play perfect to beat the number 2 or number 1 team in the country or number 7 team in the country like you're going to have to at the back end of the season. A lot of guys on this team that have an opportunity to get at bats and be in the lineup. And so it's going to give Jay an opportunity to kind of mix and match early on. I think what I saw interesting, Lloyd, to give you credit, because you've been screaming for this since last year. Stephen Milam looks like he's probably going to be the starting shortstop for LSU. Everybody had asked about it last year because how good his glove was and how quick his hands were. And, man, he just looks like he can field like a shortstop. But you had Braswell who had the experience, and he was there. And you had that double play combination, and Milam was playing well. You didn't really want to mess with that. Now Milam goes into his sophomore year as one of the top 100 sophomores. He's one of the top five, one of the five that we have. And Jay has been playing. If you've been watching any of the scrimmages and you've been going to any of the scrimmages, Jay has been playing him at short. And they've been playing Dickinson at second base, is where he played at Utah Valley. I think that's where he's transferred from. That's where he's played his career there. So you're going to have them in the double play combination, and that would obviously move Braswell to third base, which I think we all kind of anticipated. I don't think any of us thought Braswell was probably going to be the starting shortstop based off of what we have heard from some of the guys and just from watching. Thought it maybe fit better at third base, which he'll start the season there. Now, obviously, it's a talented lineup. It's a talented freshman crop. There's talented transfers, so somebody going to push for some playing time there. But thought that was very interesting. So kudos to you, Lloyd. You called it. Did you call Jay and tell him, like, hey, this is what you need to do?
Yeah, I've been pushing for it. Jay, during Thanksgiving.
Shoot him text.
Yeah, it was like, over the dinner table, we had a couple conversations. I don't know, as a coach, I don't know if you've thought about this. I know you
with a glass of orange juice.
Yeah, sometimes you're a little too close to the program.
Yeah.
And, these are things that maybe, from the outside looking in, that maybe you should make a switch or two. And he was like, what, I'll give it a shot. But between Milam maybe moving to short, and I think Dickinson will also get some run at shortstop too from the limited amount of scrimmages we've seen. Like you've seen Dickinson on the left side, whether it be third base or short. Like I think it's still going to be. And Jay, we talked about this a good bit last year, where it's almost they have an embarrassment of riches on the baseball team, and it took a while to figure out where to put everybody. Do you think that that's one of your major concerns coming into this year of trying to figure out where kind of everybody fits?
Well, I think he learned. Go ahead, Jay. No, you go ahead.
No, I was about to say, that is honestly that's my health, and that is my biggest concern. But because of what they've been able to do depth-wise, and because of what he's had depth-wise the past 2 years, I think he's well equipped right now to go into this year understanding, all right, how do I navigate this thing over this 56-game schedule? So if there's ever a year where you're like, boy, they have a lot of players, a lot of good players, how you going to get it done? I think this is the year where you expect him to be able to figure that out a little bit quicker than other years in the past, and I'm expecting him to kind of navigate that thing pretty smoothly this year.
Yeah, I think I'm with you. I think he learned his lesson last year.
Because he got tested when we brought it up.
Last year, yeah, no doubt. And I think he knew.
He was like, yeah, I know.
But I think part of that is because he had a rotation of guys that were supposed to be good, right? And they all kind of stayed at that average middling level. Nobody really separated themselves. Usually when you have a bunch of guys that can go out there and play, you'll have somebody get hot and kind of separate themselves and say, hey, okay, you've made the decision for us where you're going to be in there and you're going to get majority of the bats. Similar to what like Jake Brown did for that minute, similar to what Ashton Larson did, right? Once they kind of figured out, okay, they separate themselves, we're going to put you in there. Now, the other side of that is, well, maybe just give them an opportunity to separate themselves and give them more than just a couple chances. And look, it's a fine line to navigate because it's, you have a bunch of guys that you feel like can do it. I think he's learned his lesson from it. And I think that you're going to see him give a lot of guys opportunities early on, but I think he's going to stick with a lineup until he has to make a change, right? Which hopefully is not, but he's going to give these guys a little bit longer of a leash. I think the other conversation.
Wait, before you switch the conversation too, I do want to say this because I do believe this. Remember, because of how much he did transferring here and because of how much he was able to do for that team last year, I do, and I just got to believe too that there's some sort of an opportunity for the other guy to do it. But don't be surprised. You're gonna see Dickinson, and you're going to see both of those guys play short as well.
Yeah, it's
not gonna be just Milam. Like I would imagine if Milam's getting this much opportunity to play short in the fall or in the spring as the season's about to start, that means he probably thinks maybe our best lineup, maybe our best defensive lineup is with him there. But if for whatever reason it doesn't really pan out that way, those other guys are going to play there as well. Right. Just let that be known because you got to remember, this is their draft year again. This is their opportunity again. They didn't come here to play, quote unquote, play second fiddle if it's not really flowing like that. So you got to think about that as well.
Well, you're going to have out staying on that shortstop position. You have some freshmen that have obviously played really well. We talked about Hogg in the fall, how he was kind of making waves. But another infielder's name that has been talked about and has shown some flashes is a freshman named Mikey Ryan. So, great name.
Yeah.
Great first name. It spells it wrong, but great first name. He may get some innings there. Obviously, may get some at-bats. That talent pool is real, and it's a good thing to have. And I think, with that, right, we talk about how many options and how much depth they have offensively and defensively. They have just as much on the mound, starting pitching-wise, right? Like, we know a lot of these guys they brought in from the bullpen, and some of these guys, obviously, they had a loss early in the summer or late in the summer with one of their pitchers, Sheeran, who was supposed to be one of the top guys. He tore his ACL, so he'll be out for the year. But you have probably 5 or 6 guys that you can start, right? So, freshman, William Schmidt, obviously he's a guy they want to be able to get innings. I would imagine they're going to ease him in there unless he just comes back after the Christmas break and has an outrageous spring where, like, nobody is sniffing him. I would imagine he's probably going to get some innings in the midweek. But you have Chase Shores, who I think it's no debate that he's going to be the number one, right? Then you got Cade Anderson, who made strides at the end of last year, and by all accounts this fall has taken the next step, has developed 3 pitches, has controlled his breaking ball a lot more, has an electric fastball. So you'd imagine he's going to be in there. And then transfer Anthony Ayenson, who is very highly touted. He's one of those top 100 juniors as well. You would imagine those guys are going to get maybe the first look as a starter, but then you got Zach Cohen transfer from, I believe it was Wofford, who's there. So that's 4 or 5 including William Schmidt that you could look at as a starting option in the rotation. So there's a lot of decisions to be made that way too, but I think that's also a good thing.
Yeah, there's a lot of depth on the mound as well. We saw what we thought was going to be a lot of depth on the mound 2 years ago, and it played out to where a lot of those guys got hurt, so you never really got to see the depth. And guys were asked to step up earlier than what we were expecting. Guys were asked to step into different roles than what they were expecting off. So that kind of thing kind of threw it out. If you can get all these guys into the season healthy, and you can get all these guys through the season, majority healthy, I think you'll see something completely different where if it rolls out the way we think it's going to roll out, you're going to see a very effective and very good pitching squad and pitching rotation out of this club. And I'm looking forward to it because, like I said, this is one of those rosters where you look at it and you're like, man, this thing's deep. How do you manage it? How do you get these guys opportunities? And I think Jay is well equipped to figure that thing out and figure it out pretty quick this year.
And correct me if I'm wrong, but it would be the first time in Jay Johnson's tenure at LSU that he has a returning pitching coach, correct?
Yes.
Nate Yeskie coming back for his second year.
Yep.
I think that'll bear weight for having some of these guys come back.
No doubt.
And then having some sense of routine with having a pitching coach that's actually here for a second year as opposed to being hired to be a head coach somewhere.
Yeah, I felt like last year with some of the injuries, you only really had 4 potential options to start, right? Like the Sunday starter wasn't was a big problem for LSU. You obviously thought Thatcher Hurd was going to be a guy that you could count on. He had some flashes. He did not pitch the level that everybody had hoped he would pitch. So then you move him to the bullpen, try to fix his mentals, and then you throw Cade Anderson there a little bit, but not all the time. He still pitched in the midweek. You didn't really feel like you had another starter at that point. And so now it feels like you have options. So if someone does struggle a little bit, you have the ability to go and kind of fill that without having to worry about how we're going to eat up 9 innings.
Big swing and a miss on Will Helmers. Waited too long to play him.
Listen to me. Nobody, and it's a shame they lost because nobody's going to give that outing at the credit that it deserves. If they win that and they go to the Super Regional and they make it to Omaha and let's say they make a run, they're going to go back to that, right? And they're going to say,
highlight DVD.
They're going to say, this is what it's about, right? Like this guy hasn't pitched.
If they win that game and they make a run to Omaha, we might know him as like Chapel Hill Will at this point.
Chapel Hill
That
Will.
might be his nickname at this point.
Man.
You might not know him as anything else.
Man. Will the thrill from Chapel Hill.
Goal.
Wow.
5 2/3 a shutout ball. Came in the second.
Dominated.
He was nasty.
Dominated.
Hey, he
dude.
was nasty in that game. Hey, you got to think about this too. There's another point about having this same pitching coach back. There's a little bit of a feel of being of having that continuity with the guys that were already there, coming in and knowing what to expect out of them to be able to hit the ground running this year, as opposed to the last 2 years. These guys are still getting to learn the pitching coach. The pitching coach still getting to learn them. He's still getting, that stuff kind of takes a little while to gel. So expect them to come out the gate a little bit better than what they have in the past years, in my opinion.
Yep. And look, you still got a lot of veteran guys in the
Rotation.
pitching mix. Not really the starting rotation, but out of the bullpen and in the mix. Obviously, Gavin Guidry, right? Who also, by all accounts, has kind of elevated his ability on the mound. Did a lot of work this offseason over the summer to get stronger, kind of create some, build some more velocity. We've heard he's been in the mid-90s throughout the course of the fall. Obviously, still with his really good breaking ball.
Fucking hammer.
He's going to be there, right? With that dog mentality, with the guy who's going to go out there and not be scared to get outs back in the back end of games. You have Cade Woods. We all forgot about him. He threw 1 inning last year, transferred from Alabama. Obviously, came in here with the ability to get outs. He wasn't healthy last year. Seems like he's back healthy. Obviously, Chase Shore's in the starting rotation. Jaden Newt, that's a guy that everybody was high on, who also could maybe put him in the mix as a starter. Maybe they throw him out the bullpen, but that's a guy that they're very high on. He's been injury plagued since he started his career at LSU. And then sophomore left-hander DJ Primo, who got some big outs in the back end of the postseason. So got some veteran guys. You also have a nice mix of righties and lefties out the bullpen. So it's going to be feels like, and we've talked about this is probably Jay's most talented team he's had since he got to LSU, top to bottom, right? Yeah. Obviously, 2023 when you had Paul and you had Dylan, like
Trey Morgan,
like those are unbelievable, right? The starting 9 were really good there, but I think from top to bottom, from the first starter in the rotation to the last guy in the bullpen, from the number 1 guy in the lineup to the last guy on the bench, it feels like they have more guys that are able to be out there and contribute than they've ever had before. That could be an aggressive statement, but it feels that way.
No, I would definitely agree with that, man. And I think it's probably so hard for people to kind of understand or put it like a real. I don't know. It's probably so hard for people to understand exactly what you're saying simply because you're like, what? Wait, 2 years ago they had the number 1 and the number 2 draft pick on that team. What are you talking about? That team won a national championship. There's no way this could be real. I do think you're right on this. It may be hard to basically reciprocate that top end talent, but when you're looking top to bottom and looking at the health that they have, not what they were supposed to have, yeah, man, you could really make an argument that this may be his most talented team coming into the year.
No doubt. Hey, wait, before we keep going in the baseball conversation, did they come out with the ruling that there's going to be the revenue sharing thing? Like, is that official?
No, that's not until like March or April, isn't it?
I know that, but
There's like a date on that, right?
Yeah, I thought the same thing, but then I just saw a tweet from Ross Dellinger saying that teams starting July 1st, teams are going to have $20.5 million in revenue sharing.
I mean, he might just be hearing stuff. I mean, I don't think people have been talking about like a hard set date on this whole thing. And I would imagine no way that's because it's like a whole court.
That's what I thought.
They have to do.
Yeah, I'm seeing what you're seeing is 4 hours ago. 4 hours ago, schools have $20.5 million to share with their athletes starting July 1st. That spending cap will rise each year too. So the Carson Becks, the Allens, and Singletons decisions probably signal a new reality within the rev share era for underclassmen. We saw a degree of it in the NIL era too. So I'm thinking that it's a foregone conclusion at this point.
Yeah.
Where it feels like it's already done, but like you said, it hasn't been officially announced but it feels like this is going to pass.
Right, because I don't think he's dropping those
without
Ross that certain tweet. Like it's like, hey, I'm certain this is happening. Not like maybe looks like potentially he says it is happening, which is wild.
And it'll be interesting to see how that, because NIL isn't going anywhere.
No, he said you both can. The NIL is still going to be a thing. So yeah.
So the rich get richer,
no doubt.
And you could even say Notre Dame gets richer because of their independent status. they now have secured $20 million that they do not have to share with anybody else in their conference because they're not in one.
Right.
So all of those playoff bonuses go directly to Notre Dame.
Right, which is great for – I'm sure they can use that for NIL if they wanted to.
I'm sure.
Yeah.
Those Catholic pockets are pretty deep.
Yeah.
Where do you think all those donations go on Saturday and Sunday?
That's right. I gave some on this Sunday.
Did
Last
you?
Sunday. Oh, yeah.
I used to take a little off the top.
$5, really.
Yeah.
My uncle
Oh my God.
My uncle used to like, he would give like every so often he would throw $100 in there. And so when I was young, I would take it and I was about to throw it in there and I was like, "Can I have this?"
Yeah.
He goes,
Sure.
"Yeah, if you want, you just got to tell God."
Yeah, it's between you and the big man.
And every time I would drop it in there, obviously never kept it. Always felt bad about it. He did a good job making me feel guilty.
The Catholic guilt travels miles.
Oh yeah, it's hard. You can't get rid of it.
Uh-uh.
All right, so let's get back to the baseball conversation, Jay. I forgot where we're at before I cut you off.
You cut me off.
Did I cut somebody off, or did somebody finish their thought?
Maybe Lloyd.
Probably.
You didn't cut me off.
Oh, I don't know.
Yeah, he was just talking about the continuity with the pitching staff and everybody
Yeah.
coming back. And
Yeah.
Because we did have some questions last year when it came to how they used Anderson in that midweek role, and you were looking for a Sunday guy, and we kept waiting for that to happen with the freshman, and it never really matriculated. But a question from the chat is, obviously losing Herring, who moves into his spot? Early prognosis.
So prognosis, I like that. So I'm gonna get it. Let me get it. So I get his name.
Prognosticate.
Prognosticators are talking about. Prognosticators are
Prognosticating.
Prognosticating. There is a transfer, left-handed pitcher. I'm trying to get to his name so I don't mess it up. Who is primed to kind of fill that role that he was in. And I can't find his name right now. Why cannot? Connor Ware. So Connor Ware is a junior college guy. He's a guy that I think he's a left-handed pitcher.
Lefty, 6'4",
Yeah.
205.
So he's a guy that
Pearl River.
He's a guy that they believe they can extend. So he can come out and get some really big outs and extend the game, right? So let's say a starter struggles in the fourth or the fifth, and you need someone to come in and close the door in that inning, but then also get you into the seventh or the eighth. He is that guy. So very similar to what Griffin Herring was doing last year. Big lefty. You're going to have him, and then you also have, a bunch of other guys that we had mentioned. Cade Primo is a guy who they're gonna count on as a lefty out the pen. And I think there's two or three more that they have that they can throw out there.
And that was another part of the bullpen, I guess, equation, if you will. Is Guidry a starter now, or is that just hearsay for Matthew Conkle?
I don't know. I think that
Obviously, the velo now plays.
yeah. Listen, you don't have to have the guy that throws. If you're going to start, it's more about the pitches that you have than the velo that you have, right? Like, you don't need you to throw 98. I mean, it'd be great if you could do that, but if you can throw 92, 93 consistently and sit 92, 93, but then have three pitchers and be able to locate, that plays more than just straight velo.
Because as of the last 2 years, he's a one-pitch guy.
Yeah, breaking ball. But go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, like, Guidry as a starter is an interesting idea to me. I do think, especially over the course of the year, like, once you leave high school, it's a little bit different. But over the course of the year, even in a quote-unquote shortened season in terms of what pro ball does and in terms of what college does, he pitches with so much emotion and passion that I feel like he'd be better suited for shorter stints as opposed to a long stint, just because I would always want him to go out there and have that edge and have that and not actually lose it for a couple outs, maybe an inning, whatever it is. So for me, I think he's better suited for shorter outings, which means that he wouldn't start, but you never know. I just think he would be better in that role.
It kind of reminds me of
Hess.
No.
No.
Matty Ott. So my sophomore year, right? Matty Ott was a freshman All-American, set the school record for saves his freshman year. We won the World Series. We go, well, then Ronaldo gets hurt. I think Austin Ross went down for a little bit, and we didn't have a lot of depth on the mound, and we didn't have starting pitching, and Matty wasn't pitching terrible. He was blowing some saves at the back end of some games that, some were really unlucky, and just one of those things where the ball always went the opposite direction it needed to go. And so coach thought maybe we're going to put him in the starting rotation, right, and try that. So he started at Florida, and that did not go well. And I don't know if he made it out the second inning. And so but at that point in his career, he was basically a one-pitch guy with his slider. I mean, he had his two-seam fastball, and he had the hard breaking ball. But, once you got to the starting rotation, it's a little bit harder just to rely just on that. So that's kind of what that reminds me of. So I don't know if he's going to start. He may get some opportunities. I could see him throwing 2-3 innings in a game, right? Remember the closer that Arkansas had a few years ago? He was like the pitcher of the year or whatever in the SEC. He would start some games, but majority of the time he'd come in and sometimes he would throw 6 innings out the bullpen. And all he had was basically that nasty slider. So I could see something like that. He'd kind of be that get me out of trouble guy no matter when that trouble is.
Yeah, I think that's what he's best suited for in my mind also.
Yeah.
I would agree with that.
Catcher is the other position of need or other position of competition, right? I believe you're going to see 3 guys play, right? Aaron Beatty's the freshman. I think he's got the most upside because he's the youngest and he's extremely talented. Turned down a bunch of money to come to LSU. You got Luis Hernandez, transfer from Indiana State. Can swing the shit out of it. Had a great year offensively. Played some first. Went in there as a catcher. They say he looks good behind the plate. They say he's been great in the fall. You're going to see him back there, and then you're going to see Blaze Priester, right? Transfer from LSU. I think you're going to see Priester in the lineup a lot more as a DH than as a catcher, but you're going to see him behind the dish sometimes as well.
Yeah, I would imagine. So that's a spot right there that'll be interesting to watch this year. And that's when we talk about what Jay's been able to have in terms of depth over the past couple years. I think his ability or his experience with that is going to show up in that spot probably pretty early. I think you're going to end up seeing 2 down the stretch. 3 to start for sure. And like you said, one of them may be that extra bat that's in the lineup, but I don't foresee them being able to or using 3 throughout the whole year. But to start trying to figure it out, especially since Aaron Betty's such a talent, but a young talent, and it's hard for those guys to come in and be basically the stalwart behind the plate for the whole year, even though we saw Auburn have one last year. It's a thing. It can happen, but it's not super common. So I do think 3 to start, but I think you'll see Jay kind of exercise his ability to kind of sift out and figure out what he wants in that spot pretty early on.
Agreed. I would love to see Aaron Beatty get a lot. And look, I think the other guys are good, and maybe they're the better player. Maybe they're going to get majority of the thing. But I came in when he was a sophomore, but I watched him as a freshman. Micah Gibbs and Sean Ochinko both kind of split some time. Sean was the sophomore, and Micah was the freshman that came in, very highly touted. It got to the point where they were kind of alternating, and it got to the point where Micah just kind of like leapfrogged and took that level. And then Sean ended up playing some first, DH, and then the next year obviously played first base pretty much all year. And both are really good catchers, right? But then you had Micah for 3 years, right, starting, kind of understanding the rotation, understanding the pitchers. And to me, I think that's pretty enticing. Obviously, you can't force him there if he's not ready. But I'm anxious to see what he looks like.
2 different personalities, I imagine, between Ochinko and Gibbs.
Couldn't be more opposite, to be honest with you. Couldn't be. One is very outgoing and can, talk to anybody. The other one is extremely intelligent and awesome, funny in his own right, but very, very monotoned. And
Michael was not reserved at all when he came in as a young kid, young freshman from Pflugerville. What are you talking about?
Yeah, Micah was my host.
And wow.
Yeah.
Big swinging.
Well, it was that room, that house. It was Micah, Sean. No, Sean wasn't in that house. It was Micah, Renato,
and DJ, I believe.
DJ. And so We were kind of in that. So everybody was like, they're all hosting. You know what I mean? They're all together. But yeah, two opposite ends of the spectrum.
I would imagine so.
But both really good, right? Both great.
One very analytical.
One about
more feel.
Yeah, for sure. For sure.
But there is some, and it begs me to ask the question, is Michael Roby, Bear Jones, about to go off? No respect from the preseason media.
Yes, I agree.
Do you have a guy in mind for whenever y'all play that this happened to, or is like, oh, really? Not on, like, I don't know if they had top 100 prospect lists like they do now. It feels like baseball.
They do, but it was like Baseball America,
Right.
The magazine.
No, yeah, but it didn't happen this way because we didn't have a guy that was literally drafted the year before and then all of a sudden comes back, and then all of a sudden at the same time when he's back, he's expected to be not one of the guys. It's kind of crazy that he is. And honestly, like, I hope and I think that this is going to be channeled the right way. But there is a little reserve on the side of it. It says, just please don't try to do too much because you don't have to do too much. You are too much already in a sense of like, that's with the ability that you have. So just go out there and be you. You don't have to try to do more. And if he can do that and he can channel that the right way, look out.
BU.
Oh, look out.
BU is good enough. Plenty good enough, right? And, by being him, he's gotten to where he's at. By being him, he's doubled his home run total from his freshman year to his sophomore year, right? I'm not saying he's going to double his home run total this year, go hit 56.
Be nice.
But that would be great.
I thought that's what you were saying.
But 40, and 40 is a large number, but, I mean, he has the potential to do it. I think he could definitely get to 30s. And if he continues to the progression that he's shown with his plate discipline, walking, not trying to do too much, right? Not trying to hit the 6-run homer with nobody on base, right? I think he'll do extraordinary things.
Do you think that there's any thought of him playing any position other than first?
Yeah, I mean, I think that they've worked him at third a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
I think you may see him over there, especially if Braswell gets hurt or does something, and he's proven and Bear proves that he can be serviceable there, and someone else has given you enough confidence to be able to play first, right? Because I think that's the other side of it. You need someone to be able to go there and play first. That was a big question mark last year with him. After you lost Trey Morgan, who was one of your better defensive first basemen, who saved runs and was able to dig balls out of the dirt. How's Bear Jones going to respond and be able to adjust to first? And he did really well, right? Had a great year at first base. Obviously, they're comparing him to a really good defender, but he had a really good year. And so, you don't want to sacrifice that just to give him some time at a different position. So I think if both things play out, you could see him play some third.
Because you have
for sure
18 games. Go ahead.
You got to remember too, like he came back this year. So like we talked about the three guys who we expect to see kind of on the left side, second base position, but Bear might be able to mix in the outfield. But you got to remember him coming back, doing what he did last year. Obviously, you would need to and want to see him do that again with the bat. But if there's any opportunity at all throughout the year to be able to show that he has versatility, to be able to show that maybe he can play some corner outfield, maybe he can play another corner infield spot, that would only help him going forward in the draft. And I would imagine that has to be on Jay's mind or in the back of his mind, like, how do I keep adding value to this guy who is a huge value to our organization already?
No doubt. So I think if you're gonna see that, you're gonna see that early in the season, because I think that's where you have the ability to